sisters, Sarah and Caitlin. She was very much described as like a country girl. She loved animals, and her family always had a ton of pets growing up, like cats, dogs, rabbits, even peacocks. So she very much had a love for these animals. She was described as being very friendly, and just a beautiful girl inside and out. She was very smart. She did well in school. After high school, she attended Agnes Scott College, which is a private women's college in Atlanta, Georgia. And Lauren began college with the intention of continuing on to medical school. But she soon realized medicine wasn't for her. I guess she was really struggling with some of her required science classes, so she ended up changing her major to political science. Lauren got an internship at a law office, and this would send her studies and like her future more in the direction of law. Lauren moved to Macon, Georgia in 2008 to attend law school at Mercer University. She rented an apartment that was like right across from the university, right across from their law campus. And it was like a little apartment complex. There were 8 apartments that were rented out to the different law students who needed them. So Lauren was kind of relieved that it wasn't right in the middle of campus, in the middle of like all the parties and stuff. It was more where the law students lived who were concentrating on their academics. Lauren really buckled down and was studying hard to get through law school. Now she did have a boyfriend. She had actually met him while she was doing her internship. He worked at the law office. He was a defense attorney. His name was David S. Van Diver III. And there was quite an age difference between Lauren and David. He was 20 years older than her, and he already had a very impressive law career as a defense attorney. After years of hard work, Lauren graduated law school in 2011. And in June, just after she graduated, she attended her sister's wedding. It was a beautiful day, full of love and laughter, and Lauren really enjoyed the break from like concentrating so hard on her studies. And her family really enjoyed seeing Lauren. She'd been away at college. Sadly, this would be the last time that anyone in Lauren's family would ever see her again. So she graduates from college and she decided to stay in Macon to study for the Georgia bar exam. Her plan was to study like super intensely for the bar in the weeks leading up to the test. So after the wedding, she told her family that she was kind of going off the grid. Now, not completely. She would still call them and text, but she wasn't constantly texting. She wasn't checking her phone every time it buzzed. She just didn't want to get distracted. But there was one thing that kept distracting Lauren when she's emailing him. She said she's scared to be in her apartment, like she has this really bad feeling, but she's trying to ignore it. She really just has to get through a couple more days of living in that apartment because she was moving out in less than a week. So she kind of tries to brush it off in this email, saying that maybe it was just like some pranksters from the college. This email would be the last known communication of Lauren Giddings from, like, that anyone would have from her. 4 days would pass, and no one hears from Lauren, no one sees Lauren. And then the people in her life start to realize, like, wait a minute, I haven't seen Lauren, I haven't heard from Lauren, and they begin trying to call her, but she doesn't respond. So Lauren's sister, Caitlin Wheeler, realizes on June 29th that she hasn't heard a peep from Lauren. This is super unusual, so she begins to worry. After repeated attempts to get a hold of Lauren were unsuccessful, Caitlin begins reaching out to Lauren's friends, wondering if they knew where she was or if they had heard from her. Lauren's friends had noticed her silence, like they thought it was strange that she was just completely ignoring them, but when they get this call from her sister, they realize something's wrong. So one of Lauren's friends goes to her apartment to check on her on June 30th. Lauren's car was in the parking lot of the apartment complex, but she didn't answer her door when they knocked, or when she knocked. Her friend thought, like, maybe she had gone to run some errands or gone for a run, so she left and came back later. This friend, Ashley Morehouse, returned hours later with her boyfriend, and Lauren's car was still in the exact same parking spot. And again, there was no answer at the door. Ashley knew where Lauren kept her spare key hidden, which was on her balcony, so she used the spare key to unlock the door and went inside. Lauren's books, her keys, her purse were all still inside the apartment, but Lauren was nowhere to be found. One of the neighbors, this guy named Steven, saw Ashley and her boyfriend like poking around, and he started talking to them, and this was when he realized that his neighbor Lauren was gone. Ashley was like, hey, have you seen Lauren? But he said he hadn't, and he became pretty worried when he realized that his neighbor was potentially missing. So Ashley knew something was wrong, like Lauren's keys that she used to lock her apartment being found on the inside of her apartment was like setting off alarm bells, because she would have needed to leave, lock her apartment, and then she would have needed those keys to get back in. So she calls Caitlin, Lauren's sister, to tell her what they found, and Caitlin immediately called 911 to file a missing persons report. The police were dispatched to Lauren's apartment, and they arrived pretty quickly, but upon, like, first glance, nothing seemed suspicious. There were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, no signs of a struggle, no blood. It just seemed like a normal apartment. Still, something was definitely off, and her family was urging them to look into this. So they decided to do a luminol test to see if there was any evidence of foul play that, like, they couldn't see with the naked eye. part of her remains. Only Lauren's torso was recovered, no other part of her body. But they were able to positively identify the torso using DNA tested. But when the torso was found, police just assumed it belonged to Lauren. They couldn't say with 100% certainty. It wasn't long before the media descended on Barrister's Hall apartments, and Stephen, Lauren's neighbor, was outside with the growing crowd, watching as officers and crime scene techs were coming and going. Stephen gave an interview to the media saying he didn't see or hear anything. He told them that he knew Lauren, he had just graduated with her, and she was a very nice and personable person. He said the only thing that he could think was that maybe she had gone for a run and someone had snatched her. As investigators always do, they began interviewing those closest to Lauren, her friends, her family members. Typically, as we know, the killer is usually someone close to the victim. Detectives needed to get details on who Lauren was, where she hung out, who she hung out with, and so they began interviewing. They tried to understand the victim so that they can try to put together the crime. They also canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing all of the tenants of the apartment complex. And Stephen McDaniel was one of the people who police interviewed. He was a neighbor of Lauren's, and he was the one who had joined in early for the search for Lauren when Ashley and her boyfriend had first shown up at the apartments. Stephen lived in the apartment right next to Lauren, and he was also a student at Mercer Law School. He knew Lauren, but they weren't really friends. He didn't hang out with her socially or anything like that. Okay, so let's go back to the interview that Stephen gave to the media while he was standing outside as this crime scene was unfolding. So remember, he had said that Lauren had probably gone for a run and someone had snatched her. The reporter then is asking about the dumpster. It seems like that's where the police found her body. And Stephen goes, "Body?" And then he just freezes and stares blankly. And he doesn't say anything, so she repeats the question, and again, he's just frozen. The reporter is like, "Are you okay, sir?" And he's like, "I think I need to sit down." The camera then kind of pans and follows Stephen as he walks away and kind of sits down or flops on the ground near a bush. After a minute, he stands up and continues his report or interview, I guess. He goes on to tell them how no one had seen Lauren since Saturday, but that sometimes she would go out running. He said she usually ran midday, and she would meet up with groups of friends to run. So he seems to have a pretty good idea of Lauren's movements throughout the day. But then he said, we are no longer in classes together, so I don't see her that much. He didn't know that she was planning on moving out the very same day that her body was found. And then things just get really weird. He starts to talk about Lauren's emails. He says that around 10 p.m. saying how she's scared to be in her apartment, and he starts crying, and he's telling reporters how he wishes he would have helped Lauren. And then he says, quote, "I could have loaned her a handgun. I have a little handgun for defense." End quote. So this guy is raising all of these red flags to police. He's inserting himself into the investigation. Police now know he has a gun, and he seems to know a lot about Lauren's daily schedule, when she goes running. So he's very suspicious. As police began investigating Stephen, they found out that one of his favorite questions that he likes to ask people is, how would you carry out the perfect murder? Police also noticed how Stephen hung around the apartments, like outside, all day long, just watching investigators and crime scene techs work. So, like I said, police interviewed him. During his interview, he's sitting in a small interrogation room at the Macon Police Detective Bureau. There's a hidden camera trained on Stephen, and police keep asking him over and over what happened to Lauren, and he just kept playing dumb. His interview began around 11 p.m. at night, and that was the night that Lauren's body was found, and this interview with police continued on to the early morning hours of July 1st. Stephen just kept answering every question with, "I don't know." At one point, just to kind of try to throw him off, one of the detectives said, "Stephen, which tastes better, Coke or Pepsi?" And he responded with, "I don't know." They again ask him what happened to Lauren, and he says, "I don't know." Detective David Patterson said to Stephen, quote, "You do know, Stephen, you do know." End quote. Now, while this interview was taking place, Stephen's apartment was being searched, something he had to give permission for. Another detective, Scott Chapman, entered the interrogation room and put down a picture of Lauren in front of Stephen and was like, "Stephen, your neighbor is missing, and we found blood inside your apartment. You didn't get it all up." But still, Stephen says nothing. They then begin to ask him about scratches that he had on his stomach, and his response was that he must have scratched himself while he was sleeping. The investigators then kind of tried this good cop approach, telling Stephen, "Look, we know you are not the monster. This is your chance to tell the world what happened and clear your name." But he refused to speak. They left for a while and came back and said, "Stephen, something is always left at a crime scene." Through the hours of the interrogation, Stephen had mentioned to police that he was a virgin, that he was saving himself for marriage. And police pounced on this information because during the search of Stephen's home, they had found this weird collection of condoms, all different brands and colors and types of condoms. And so they're like, "Well, if you're a virgin, why do you need all of these condoms?" And he admits that he had stolen them from different apartments over the years, his neighbors' apartments. He said the doors were unlocked when he entered, so he's now admitting to breaking, going into someone's house and stealing stuff. During the search of Stephen's home, police also found a master key and a key to Lauren's apartment. access to this. Another thing that was found inside his apartment was this flash drive, and it contained all of these pictures of Lauren, like personal pictures, pictures with her friends. This had obviously belonged to Lauren. A search of Stephen's computer would show that he had been looking her up on Facebook like every single day. They also found a pair of Lauren's underwear inside his apartment. Stephen McDaniel had been stalking Lauren for weeks, if not months. He used this homemade selfie stick, like he took a camera and taped it onto a stick, and he would stand outside under Lauren's apartment and like hold it up and record through her windows. A hacksaw was recovered from like in a utility closet in the laundry room of the apartment. So this was a shared laundry room. And then inside the utility closet of this shared laundry room, they found a hacksaw. And this was what police believed the killer had used to dismember Lauren's body. So while this hacksaw wasn't found inside Stephen's apartment, the packaging that it had come in was found inside his apartment. So he had to have been the person who bought the saw. Lauren's blood was found on this saw. So police are telling Stephen all about all of this evidence that they found against him. And he still doesn't break or admit to anything. He tells police that he's innocent. Before this interrogation ended, police produced a warrant for DNA from Stephen. They kept hounding him about the murder, but he didn't break. He was taken to jail on other charges, though, and we will talk about those charges now. Another very disturbing thing that police found on Stephen's computer were images of child exploitation. Police used these images to lean on Stephen about Lauren's murder. He was charged with 7 counts of sexual exploitation of a child, as well as the murder of Lauren Giddings. And Stephen pled not guilty to all of these charges, but then he took a plea deal in which the state would drop all of the child sexual exploitation charges if he confessed to killing Lauren, but he also had to tell police what had happened that night. Stephen took the plea deal, and then after he had signed it, he told police everything. Stephen said that he went into Lauren's apartment while she was sleeping. He was standing over her, and she woke up. He said she was calm and told him to leave her apartment. According to Stephen, she said, "Get the F out of my apartment." He jumped on top of her and grabbed her throat, and Lauren fought back. But he strangled her to death. He then dragged her body into the bathroom and put her in the bathtub and went back to his own apartment. He returned the next night with a hacksaw and dismembered her body, placing different parts of her body in different garbage cans all around the law school campus. Now the remainder of Lauren's remains, like the rest of her body parts, were never recovered. They had been taken to landfills by the time Stephen confessed to these crimes. So on the day that Lauren's body was found, like before her torso was found in the garbage can, a garbage truck had come to dump that garbage bin that she was found in. But because police cars were parked in front of it because they were searching for Lauren, the waste management truck did person's case, and we would never know what happened to her. Stephen told police that he wanted to go inside Lauren's apartment and watch her sleep because he had a crush on her. But police do believe this murder was premeditated. They believe Stephen had become obsessed with Lauren. He had lived next to her for 3 years, and he knew she was planning on moving out in just a couple of days, and he couldn't let her leave him, so he chose to kill her. Stephen wrote an allocution to the court before his sentencing, and I'm going to read it to you now, but just a warning, like, this is pretty in-depth of the murder, so just give you that little warning. This is what he wrote. On Sunday, June 26th, 2011, around 4:30 a.m., I entered Lauren Giddings' apartment with a master key that I possessed. I was wearing gloves and a mask. I walked to her bedroom door and stood there, observing her sleeping. As I took another step, the floor creaked, and she woke up and sat up in bed and saw me, and said very calmly, "Get the F out." I leapt across the bed and grabbed her around the throat. We stumbled out of the bed and onto the floor, and in the struggle to get away, she moved her legs and lower body under the bed, preventing her from getting away or from kicking me. I kept my hands around her throat as we fell to the floor. She reached up and was able to grab the mask and pull it over my head. She saw me and said, "Stephen, please stop." I continued to strangle her until she stopped moving. I remained that way, with my hands around her throat for several minutes, possibly as long as 15 minutes. She did not move anymore. I dragged her into the bathroom and placed her in the bathtub, and then returned to my apartment. I remained in my apartment, mostly on the computer, throughout the day of Sunday, June 26th. I returned to Lauren's apartment around midnight Sunday to begin to dismember her with a hacksaw that was later recovered in the laundry room maintenance closet. I removed her limbs, her head, and wrapped them in several trash bags separately and discarded them in the Mercer Law School dumpster across the street from the Barrister Hall apartments. I cut up the mask and gloves and shirt and flushed them down the toilet. I wrapped her torso in black plastic trash bags and put it in the green Barrister's Hall trash can on Tuesday, June 28th, before daylight. I then cleaned her bathroom. I never used the fridge in apartment 1. At no time before Lauren's death did I sexually accost her. At no point after her death did I perform any sexual acts of any kind with respect to her remains. She was wearing the pink running shorts when she died, and I never removed them. They were found on her torso just as I had left them Monday. On Monday, I stayed home from the bar prep class. Over the next several days, I rarely slept and used my computer extensively, yet still attended bar prep class on Tuesday and Wednesday. I joined the search party Wednesday night into the early morning hours of June 30th, still in a dream-like delusional state which I believed at the time, while taking part in the search, that Lauren was still alive, and that I had not done is difficult for me to explain why I killed Lauren and attempted to conceal my deed the way that I did. The difficulty explaining it lies in my own inability to understand myself. I know that it was very wrong, and I am not delusional or without any morals or decency. Yet I acknowledge that something in my makeup, in my psychology, my neuropathy, my own particular pathology, perhaps must explain it, but it is beyond my reach. Lauren was my friend. Not a day goes by that I don't grieve over her death. I am extremely sorry for what I did to Lauren and her family. I do not expect the forgiveness of Lauren's family. There is no way that I can ever deserve it. No words are sufficient to take away their pain. If only I could take back what happened, I would do so. If only I could restore Lauren to her family, I would. All I can say to Lauren's family and her many friends is that I am so very sorry. So this was his statement, his allocution that he wrote before sentencing. Stephen McDaniel was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. 4 years after Stephen was sentenced, he filed a motion saying that his rights had been violated during the investigation and pre-trial process. He cited that he was in a catatonic state and that a proper warrant wasn't filed to search his apartment. He also stated that the state had gained insight into his defense strategy and used it against him through intercepted records of his legal research while he was imprisoned. He said the judge was prejudiced against him, and he also said that he had ineffective assistance from his lawyers during that first trial. But he never claimed he was innocent, just that his rights were violated during the investigation into Lauren's death. Which is super frustrating because Lauren's rights were violated when he killed her, but okay. So, he wanted a new trial, and he appeared in front of a judge representing himself in 2018. During this, he questioned his former defense attorney, who stated to the court that he actually thought Stephen was innocent until the evidence began to pour in against him. And then he heard Stephen McDaniel confess in detail to how he killed Lauren. The judge denied Stephen's appeal, and he will remain behind bars, hopefully for the remainder of his life. But he is currently behind bars at the Hancock State Prison, and he is behind bars with the possibility of parole, so who knows? And that is the murder of Lauren Giddings. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another true crime video. I have a Patreon, so if you want more content from me, check out the link down below. I'm just gonna quickly cite my sources for this video. I got information from an article titled "The Killer Wouldn't Crack" by Annie Womack and Joe Kovac Jr., posted on MacedaMacon.com. AllThat'sInteresting.com had an article by Jessica O'Connor titled "The Grisly Murder of Lauren Giddings and the Chilling Evidence the Police Found in Our Neighbor's Apartment." An episode of A Time to Kill, Season 3, Episode 1, titled "What Happened to Lauren?" And True Crime Daily had an article titled "Law School Student Murdered, Dismembered by Stalking Classmate Neighbor." and that was published on April 11th, 2017. Thank you guys again for joining me. I love you all. I'll see you soon.